Everyone, welcome to another episode of Northern Lights, Canadian Women in Tech and Business, where we highlight the incredible journeys of inspiring women who are shaping the future of technology and business in Canada. Today, we have the honor of speaking with another trailblazer, Vass Bednar. Vass is a renowned public policy entrepreneur operating at the vibrant intersection of technology and public policy. With her rich background in various leadership roles at notable institutions like Delphia, Airbnb, and the City of Toronto, she brings a unique interdisciplinary approach to understanding and shaping the regulatory frameworks that influence our future work and lifestyles. Vass is known for her creative, data-driven insights, having chaired the federal government expert panel on youth employment. Her dedication extends to fostering public dialogue, demonstrated through her role as co-host of the Detangled podcast and her newsletter Rags to Riches, which
Yeah.
explore Canadian startups and policy dynamics. Her contributions have been recognized with the prestigious McMaster Arch Award, highlighting her as an outstanding alum. Vass, thank you so much for joining me today.
Berlin, thanks for getting so deep in on researching my background. Thanks
Of
for having me.
course. You're amazing. So I was just thinking you could start off with telling us what inspired you to pursue a career at the intersection of technology and public policy.
Oh man, the truth is it's all a happy accident. So I really wanted to maintain a kind of intellectual flexibility when I was coming out of school. I liked doing math, I liked reading, I liked doing presentations, I liked writing. I felt so nervous about committing myself to one pathway that could sort of narrow things.
Mhm.
And what I love about public policy is that it's, very demanding and lets you integrate research and politics. And it's just kind of this arena of good or great or useful ideas. So, I don't think I knew when I was 17, 18, or 19 that I was compelled to be in the technology space per se. I wasn't like a tech head. I wasn't coding. I was, at that time, social media, even how we existed, was like so different. And I don't want to bore you with that, but like it just
Mhm.
was. Like we had, like maybe one desktop family computer, and I have a
Mhm.
twin brother, so we had to like negotiate using it. Anyway, I don't mean to bore you. How? I think it's important for me to tell you that, a series of small decisions and a bit of luck
Mhm.
and immersing myself in things that I cared about, reading, going to book launches, going to fun documentaries, all sort of helped. So I would hate to pretend anything was more premeditated than it actually was.
Yeah, that's great to hear how you found your path and that you're doing something you're so passionate about. So
You're
I
very
think our
kind.
listeners would really like to know, how did your experience at McMaster University Arts and Science program and
Mm.
your Master of Public Policy at the University of Toronto shape your approach to public policy?
Well, I got really spoiled in the arts and science program because it was a class of 60 people, and we were most often, it was a cohort model. So we were most often together. We had a lot of courses that were kind of just for us. So I got to
Mhm.
build maybe a particular intellectual safety with friends kind of over time. And then when we spent a year studying physics, we were also doing a little bit of history and philosophy and, kind of broadening. So again, it didn't help me figure out we're at that stage of life, like you're just naturally struggling and exploring, like, who do I want to be? What will life look like? What's worth investing in? And it was still difficult at that time to even imagine a more entrepreneurial pathway. Pathways are very traditional. A lot of people in my class are doctors and lawyers. That's amazing. They're doing awesome things, but we weren't always necessarily like the most creative at that time in terms of
Yeah.
what we would do. Um, but we knew what had like status or, signaled that you were smart. But it was hard to see different ways of sort of being intelligent and doing meaningful work. So how did it prepare me? It let me do a lot of things. Like, it's fun and it's charming to get to speak to young people who, I think have it so together, right? And maybe on the inside, a few things I hope resonate of like just doing things, right?
Yeah.
Figuring it out. What do you like? What do you not like? Let me tell you something for real, which is I'm kind of the same person I was in high school, just now I make money. Seriously. Like,
Yeah.
I have a monthly column in the Globe and Mail at university. I wrote for the school newspaper. I was a TA and an RA in university, I also get paid to do research now, and now I teach as a sessional. So there
Yeah.
are a lot of parallels in terms of, yeah, just core work and then building around the edges and sort of being involved in communities. And then studying public policy, I was like, this is great. Um, I'm still in touch with tons of people from my class. We share articles. Wish each other's kids happy birthday. We complain about things and we sense make the world. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I loved studying. I loved studying even though I was really stressed when I was a student because I wanted to do everything perfectly and I didn't want to close any doors.
Yeah.
But it was like a healthy stress and whatever. I was really good at studying, but that's useful kind of later on.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really nice that you kept so many connections. And I think it does really sound like your university experience really did prepare you.
You're
Um,
very kind. Yes.
yeah, that's great to hear. So just moving on to your professional roles, what are some of the
hmm
key projects and initiatives that you led during your time at Delphia and Airbnb?
Oh, Delphi and Airbnb. I mean, I was on the policy team for 2 years at Airbnb. I helped to legislate about 70% of the country when it comes to short-term rentals. And I was sort of kind of passively, I guess, studying this broader relationship between disruptive technology firms and the state. I also did a bunch of our tax deals, like I was kind of the point person, so helped kind of unlock some additional revenue opportunities for municipalities and provinces once they pass legislation. It was a super collaborative space, so it's hard to look at any one thing and be like, oh, those were like only my fingerprints, or I was like the mastermind behind that.
Yeah.
I spent more of my time with policy people than I think people sort of thought about that job. It was fun to kind of go around Canada and talk to people about their ideas and kind of structures. And
Mhm.
then at Delphia, I spent about a year there. It's an AI and a fintech company. The company's been evolving since then, but we sort of had a vision for how you could embed a policy focus early on at a company, and that was kind of the epitome of responsible innovation. So I got to work across the engineering team and the product team. Um, One thing I did, I like led this simulation of like a cybersecurity attack. Like, what would we do? And I sort of, yeah, like what if we built in regulatory compliance from the MVP stage instead of trying to kind of retroactively do it later? And I draw those parallels just because now a lot of my work is about technology firms and the state and also the costs of regulatory compliance. So now I'm making it seem a lot less fun than it actually was, but it was really interesting. And there were snacks at both, despite the difference in scales of the company. It was a
Yeah.
little bit, like I say, that's like the startup cliche, right? There's like
Yeah.
snacks and a beanbag chair. Yeah.
That's so nice.
hmm
Yeah, really wonderful to hear about your initiatives. And I think this actually builds on a few of my previous questions. But how
hmm
did your role at Queen's Park and the City of Toronto influence your view on how to craft urban policy and governance? And in a similar vein, how has this influenced your approach to the UFT in terms of public policy and technology integration?
Hmm. Well, soon after I was a political staffer at Queen's Park, Um, or just before I did a national fellowship called Action Canada. I also did a TEDx Toronto talk about making policy more fun. And then just after my time as a political staffer, I chaired a federal panel for the Prime Minister and the Minister of Labor it was the expert panel on youth employment. So I think those more kind of direct policy and political experiences helped me appreciate kind of you know, where do good ideas come from and where do they go? I think more often than not, we elect thought followers, not thought leaders. So
Yeah.
those experiences just sort of let me also see where do ideas come from? Are stakeholders, are actors overprivileged in policy processes? How is civil society represented or not represented? Um, yeah, I was learning a lot, but I was also really trying things on at that stage, um, and trying to coach myself to be comfortable that, if something wasn't right, that's okay. I was a political staffer for 18 months. I think in political staffer years, that's closer to 3 years.
Mhm.
All the cliches, right? Like I had a BlackBerry. I was like always at the office.
That's so
And
funny.
it's funny. I appreciated that time and it was very exciting in a lot of ways. It was also really draining
Yeah.
and I just knew it wasn't for me, but I still learned a lot. So I could still kind of value it instead of view it as, oh, I'm striking out because I thought that was going to be like a pathway where I might grow. I was always looking to kind of
Yeah.
grow and stretch and do more. And then if I couldn't do that, I would go get a different job and sort of click refresh.
Yeah. Yeah. You made some really great points there. And I think having that growth mindset is super important. Just figuring out what you
Mm,
like doing versus what you don't like doing is really important.
you said it
Um,
better than me. What kind of stuff do you like doing? You're figuring it out too. That's more
well,
interesting than me. It's like I found this nice woman online. It's like I'm just like an old lady. I'm just a mom of a toddler trying to do all the things, man. What are you drawn to? What's cool
well,
nowadays?
yeah. I'm really into STEM and business. So,
Cool.
um, I've been kind of pursuing, this podcast and,
Mm-hmm.
trying to start a new council at my school for a building
Right.
that's being built. That's
Right.
all about the future, technology, arts, innovation. So I'm really looking forward to it. I really do believe that technology is going to be the future.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really nice of you to ask. Yeah, I'm super interested in that. And I feel like it's just going to take off from here. So I'm super
That's awesome.
excited.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe you. I
Yeah.
think I would have also been excited at that stage of my life if I understood it better. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like your
Yeah.
generation has this like just not it's not a lower barrier to entry. It's just you can like get connected and sort of see so much of what it how people are and
Mhm.
how they can be that I think is really fascinating and really cool. Thanks for sharing that with
Absolutely.
me.
Absolutely. No, thank you for asking. So just moving right along here.
Hmm.
So being the chair of the federal government's expert panel on youth employment, what are some of the significant findings and recommendations that you made?
That report. Okay, we had I think 13 final recommendations. And some of what we were putting forward were observations like, which were like interesting at the time, but are now, so old because they've been actioned.
Mhm.
We were pointing out there'd been this, growth in part-time students. So people who were older learners or, also working, having families, making career changes at universities or colleges. But that a lot of the funding for students was actually predicated on being a full-time student. So we were kind of like, okay, there's an incongruency here. It's kind of a simple change, right? That helps others access
Mhm.
support. We offered a critique of the Canada Summer Jobs Program based on what we heard from people who were trying to access it, and also sort of helped make the point that the jobs there shouldn't just be for the summer, that students are often looking for work that kind of supplements their time while they're studying. And talked a lot with the government, and no one knows how to kind of crack this, but young people weren't always having trouble finding a job,
Mhm.
but there was this real problem of relevant work experience. And often young people were trying to either try something on or affirm, they might have an interest or a curiosity in something, but before they were going to make a commitment to a particular job pathway, they wanted to be able to test it out or get exposure. So, what alternative ways other than kind of paid work? I think you're seeing a growth of like work integrated learning and co ops, and those have definitely replaced the unpaid internship. Was also a way for that time. I mean, this was very early in the Trudeau government's tenure. It was a way that that government was signaling that they really cared about young people.
Yeah.
Um, Different critics will tell you or praise that government in kind of different ways in terms of generationally how they've addressed. I guess Generation Squeeze would call it millennial issues. I'm definitely a geriatric millennial, so I think Gen Z is where it's at now, Gen
Yeah.
Z, but
Yeah.
yeah. Are you
Yeah.
Gen Z? Do
I'm
you
Gen
identify
Z.
that way?
Um,
You're like, I'm
I
digital native. I don't
yeah,
know.
no, I I'm born in 2008, so I'm definitely in Gen Z. I don't fully identify as it. I've seen some jokes around the internet of millennial
Mm,
versus Gen Z. I feel like those are quite funny to watch. but I don't
Yeah,
fully
it's like
identify.
socks. Like you wear your socks high, right?
Yeah, yeah, we
Okay.
do.
My husband told me we need to get new socks that our ankle socks need to go in the garbage. And I was like,
Yeah, it's
okay.
quite funny. Even some of the dancing videos from,
Yeah.
back then versus now. Yeah, they're just really funny. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great point.
You're
Yeah,
kind to say it's a great point. Anyway, that project, since then I've done lots of policy work. It's not always as formal.
yeah,
Um, but it's always fun, even if it's serious or on otherwise, I'll say boring topics. It's such a privilege to be able to make those contributions.
yeah. I have to say that is really incredible and sounds like a great experience being able to help younger people. I
Hmm.
think that's really just helping to pave the way for future generations, which is really what we need right now. So that's really great.
You're very
Um,
kind.
so maybe you could talk a little bit more about throughout your career, you've been incorporating data to address issues related to public policy. Where do you
Hmm.
see the future of data-driven approaches in government and beyond?
Well, we're in this kind of very disorienting media landscape right now. And this really interesting shop out of the federal government called Policy Horizons. They had this report from earlier this year. I think it's called Disruptions on the Horizon, so that I'm saying the word horizon twice, but like that's just the facts. And the disruption that they deemed was both highest probability and kind of closest to us in the future was that within the next 3 years, people would not be able to understand what was the truth. And that
Mhm.
goes for images and audio. So I think that starts to reinforce numerically driven diagnoses of
Mhm.
policy problems. Sometimes people make this joke. It's not even very funny, but they say, um, oh, hang on, it's data driven policy, or they're, anyway, they try to flip it so that they're just like evidence-based solutions, evidence-based policy. You know what? I can't even remember the joke because it's not funny, but they're basically saying like you engineer what you want to happen and then you kind of retroactively just like find the data that you need.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but we're also perversely and wonderfully in this like very data rich era where we can supplement the best kind of traditional sources like Statistics Canada and tax data when researchers are able to use it with kind of all these other indicators. So
right.
in terms of what I see the future, I mean, I'm very grateful for people who take on the work of knowledge translation, who combat mis and disinformation or kind of correct or engage with people to kind of make sure they're using the best possible information. I don't know that I have like a hot take on the
Yeah,
future. I'm definitely watching all this predictive market stuff, like Polymarket and just the casinofication of life, like everything becoming a bet.
yeah,
Um, I'm kind of fascinated by that, but I don't know what I think about it yet.
yeah, yeah. Those are some really good points there. I mean, nobody can really predict the future, but I,
But everyone's trying to get rich off doing that, it seems. I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah, I know. I mean, I really, yeah, that's a good point, but I really do feel like, you know, I'm very hopeful for our future. I feel like it's, this is our generation that needs to kind of take the issues and figure out how to solve them. So I think we're at a very integral point right now.
Oh, yeah. I can be optimistic too. Don't worry. I didn't mean
Yeah.
to not be optimistic.
Yeah. No, but
I
it's
got to
also good
harness
to
my
be realistic
optimism.
too. It's
Hmm.
good that you're being
Hmm.
realistic as well.
Thanks.
That's really great.
Thank
Um,
you.
moving on to your newsletter, Regs to Riches, I'm really interested to hear more about that. Can you tell us about the topics you cover related to Canadian startups and public policy?
Yeah. So my newsletter has been a little bit dormant lately because I was finishing a book that I'm co-authoring that's coming out in
Wow.
October. But I do write, I basically started, I thought I was only going to write about policy and tech. And I was just kind of trying to, be the change I want to see. I kind of observed a gap, but I wanted to fill it. And I thought that my voice could. And it was really about practicing too, practicing writing and thinking. And it
Hmm.
was also a project I started in the pandemic when like honestly, I didn't have that much to do. I didn't have children at that time. I was just kind of working and with my computer and like going on walks with my friends, I guess. Um, so what do I do there? I mean, it's a playful space. There's always like a music video and there's more kind of a voice to it compared to maybe my newspaper writing, but I'm often sort of pointing to an issue or an opportunity, describing it, and then kind of offering this like free advice or free solutions. Like, what if we think about it this way? We could just do this.
Hmm.
And it's just a way I try to reframe policy innovation. It doesn't have to be massive. Like, I think incrementalism can be kind of radical and refreshing, and that in the aggregate, it's really wonderful and can lead to a lot of change.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I meet the nicest people. Like sometimes people write to me and like correct me, or they're like, "Have you thought about this? Check this out." I'm like, "That's cool."
That's
And
really great.
it's also led to work. Like not that I
Yeah.
use it for that, but people will be like, "Oh, we want to do a research report," or um, I've had political staffers write to me that they've included something in like a private member's bill or something that they plucked from rags to riches, and I'm like, "Great! Like that's amazing. It's
Yeah.
happy,
Yeah. That's incredible that you started your own newsletter because I actually write for my school newspaper as well. And I feel like,
awesome."
it's a great outlet to just express new innovative ideas. And like you said, lead
Hmm.
to a lot of change. I especially feel like in topics like STEM and global affairs, really important subjects. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's good to practice sort of communicating complex things. You can always do an 80-page paper, but can you do the 800-word version?
Yeah.
It comes from practice. So practice is great.
Yeah. It's a great skill to have. So congratulations again.
You're very kind. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, keeping on with the congratulations on being recognized as an outstanding alum
Oh
with
no,
the
what's
McMaster
next?
Arch Award.
You're too
Yeah,
nice. You're too nice. You're so nice. You know what? Yes, I was recognized as an outstanding alumni. But maybe I could tell you, would it be okay if I told you instead about, you're hosting a podcast and collecting great ideas, and I host a podcast too? Could I tell you a bit about that?
absolutely. Go ahead.
I don't want to jump ahead of you. I feel like it came up in your research.
Nope, go ahead.
Um, because the alumni thing is like, I don't know, someone nominated me. I don't know why, to be honest. I didn't feel that outstanding. I was like, okay. Um, I wanted to go back to just sort of action, the impetus towards action, which clearly you have, right? You're not just thinking about things, you're also doing them. And I have this very fun side gig. It's truly a gig where I host a podcast about what's new in the new economy for the Globe and Mail. It's called Lately. And the fun fact there is that the executive producer on the show was a guest on my live radio show that I used to co-host years and
Hmm.
years ago. And we didn't even really stay in touch. She just sort of kept like the way you're passively in touch with people, like maybe you see their LinkedIn and things like that. And then when
Yeah,
she was developing the show, I was one of the names that came up. People were like, "Oh, we need someone who could do this and that and this." And, when people have their wish lists.
yeah,
I tell you only because it's something really shiny that sort of comes up, but it's hard to sort of show everything that's behind that. It's hard to show the hours of volunteering, the pitching, the being a guest on other shows that sort
yeah,
of goes into something wild and random like that. And again, back to me being 17 and a half, 18. I never had it on my mood board. I was never like, I'm going to be a host of something. But over time, as I built up my career, I realized I like doing presentations. Like, I like being on stage. I like delivering keynotes. And those
yeah.
were all good clues. So thank you for letting me share those kind of random reflections, kind of working
No, of
backwards. But
course.
I hate to come off as if things were premeditated, that I really kind of always had my stuff together
Yeah.
for years on end. It's always been a kind of happy evolution.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. And I think, having a podcast is really just such a great way to meet such inspiring people. And I think we can both relate to that. I know you must meet so many great people
Oh
every
yeah, I
single
get to
day.
meet super fun people. It's stressful, it's thrilling, it's exciting.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think this actually leads perfectly into my next question, which is what
Hmm.
advice would you give to young women aspiring to make a mark in the tech and business industries? And are there any particular challenges you face that you think they should be prepared for?
Well, I mean, on challenges, I think there's a kind of latent sexism that's always around. I
Of
think
course.
reading about it, being prepared for things, finding allies. Every time I write, like publicly, not really my blog so much, but definitely in the Globe and Mail, I get messages from, I mean, I won't say cranks, but like people who are cranky. So it's not just that they want to debate an idea with me or feel entitled to me replying, which they're not. It's that
Right.
they want to tell me that I'm dumb or that I shouldn't be able to write for the Globe and Mail. And that's
Mm-hmm.
where it sort of crosses over. But I can see how it could be a deterrent for people because it sucks and doesn't make me feel good, even though I can kind of like have a laugh or share it with my editor. So I
Yeah.
think be prepared, a little bit prepared to be underestimated, to kind of go into situations assertively, armed to the teeth. I'm making it depressing. What advice would I have? There are these amazing micro communities all over the tech space.
Mm-hmm.
Through meetups, through what turns into like great group chats, and I think it can be a really exhilarating space because people are really transparent about when they need help or support or input, and that is fundamentally about vulnerability and openness. So recognizing maybe reciprocity in that way where you may need something and you're kind of putting this bat signal out, but also contributing when people put that bat signal out and sort of showing up, or I don't know, being a user tester or going to that book launch or that live podcast thing. You never know who's going to be there.
Yeah.
Um, that would be some of my advice, the kind of eyes wide open element and forging on and believing in yourself and elevating others who you think are amazing because it all kind of comes back.
Yeah. That's great to hear. Thank you so much for that advice. I think that will really resonate well with our listeners. And
Okay.
I think your point on gender roles is really important. And I really do think, quite honestly, that that's probably one of the biggest issues that our generation faces and that really needs to be fixed. So thank you for bringing that
Well,
up.
it's sometimes it's unconsciously there. I think
Yeah.
each generation gets better and better with it.
Yeah.
Um, but or maybe, it's something I think people feel it's difficult to see. So maybe to a certain extent we imagine it as well. I'm not really sure. I just have felt like sometimes in my career I'm like on the same stage with someone and it's just like and they're a guy and that's great and I'm like, okay, but I've also done like A and B and C and
Yeah.
D and E and F and I'm like,
Yeah.
that's awesome for me, but I'm like, I don't know, you just did one thing and you get to be on the stage. Like it just
Yeah.
felt like it was like harder for me to finally get the invite. But again, maybe it's just I don't know, maybe I imagine it. Yeah.
No, I don't think you do. Like, I think that's a really good point because it's definitely taken over a lot. And, every single one of my previous podcasts that I've done, which is maybe about 10 or 12 by now, we've
Mm.
talked about this issue many times.
Okay. Okay.
So it's definitely not just you. And I think it really is an issue that needs to be, fixed and solved. And, it's great that we're speaking out about this because it really is just that important. I think that's going to really pave the way well for,
Hmm.
next generations.
Hmm.
So,
Okay. I'll
yeah.
keep my paving stones out for you
Yeah,
guys.
you should. So what do you see as the most exciting opportunities and trends in the Canadian tech ecosystem over the next decade?
Hmm. I think people are trying, it seems like in Toronto, people are trying to kind of bring back and revitalize the micro community around entrepreneurship,
Hmm.
um, and having kind of pitch nights and like mini hackathons and convening more. I do think that type of casual convening is really important and builds a lot of connective tissue.
Yeah.
What do I think are some of the most important opportunities? I mean, maybe better connections with and to and for government. Like I do get excited about opportunities for building around like digital public infrastructure. It's not for everyone, but it is this like natural overlap between, the tropes of like the cowboy disruptor and like the wonky bureaucrat. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I wish I had a better, like cooler answer for you, but that's sort of what I'm keeping an eye on for now, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really great to hear. And this is actually my last question for you, but it's also
Okay.
my favorite because everyone has a different answer to it. But what
Uh-oh, okay.
legacy do you hope to leave in the tech and business world, and how do you want to be remembered?
Oh my gosh, legacy. That's such a big word.
It
You know,
is.
I mentioned the word fun earlier, and again, that talk I did, making policy more fun. And even though I do a lot of work that's like serious, or I even use the word boring, fun is important for me. Like I derive fun from that. It's been fun for me to kind of talk about rebalancing power in marketplaces in Canada, or come up with ideas for how we can make the economy work better. So
Hmm.
I think a fun legacy for me, and I use the word fun again, would be being recognized as kind of an ideas person who was unpredictable but constructive, but also playful, and maybe made you smile or laugh
Yeah.
or invited you with their writing to sort of I'm not trying to like show off when I'm doing my work. It's really
Hmm.
an invitation. Yeah, and
Yeah.
maybe just a pizza party would be nice. Everyone loves pizza.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that answer. And it really does sound like you have such a great combination of, smart and IQ, but also EQ, like being able to
Oh,
connect with people. So that's really great. Um,
I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
no, it's
I
great.
also I did mention this already, but I did want to tell you that I'm a mom. I think you know that.
No, you did say
Um,
that. That's great.
you know, it's like a woman thing.
Hmm.
It's like parenthood, and people are like, dads are parents too. And like, yes, but
It's
it's like
different.
a very interesting thing when you're career focused and you can like read about it and do research and sort of prime people. Um, but it's been kind of a fascinating forcing function to just recalibrate your life around someone else, and sort
Yeah.
of you have to kind of your perfectionism and like your goals for every day. It's kind of like, okay, these are my goals for the week. And like,
Yeah.
or like
Yeah. Yeah.
nothing else matters unless like, my son like slept well. Does he have enough diapers? Is he eating? And then you're like, okay, all that stuff's going well. Okay, okay, now I can like
Right.
do these other things.
Yeah.
And it's given me a lot of empathy, more, even more empathy for kind of that work of starting up a family,
Hmm.
and kind of the messiness of life, and where we can kind of be there for each other, both as community, but also through the role of the state and kind of what people need. I didn't mean to make that like my closing. I
Hmm.
just was like,
No, that's
I don't know.
great.
That's like my true self, my secret identity, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a really good point that you bring up because it's just the way life goes. And I feel like,
Hmm.
it's great to be, really real because you've had an incredible career, but like you also have, your personal life, your family. So,
Yeah, and where do we draw those lines? I feel like your generation is going to do even a better job than mine at this. That it used to be really seriously like way more like your professional persona was like the suit and tie, and
hmm.
like you know what
Yeah.
I mean? And it's kind of like, now people are like showing that more, and I think it's cool, and I admire that. So I try to let myself do that, even though sometimes it feels like embarrassing or infantilizing,
Hmm.
because I think online there's like a bit of a charade for everyone in terms of who those avatars are.
Yeah.
Now I'm being a little bit silly. I don't want to stand between you and your weekend or anything like that.
No, this was great. Vass, thank you so much for your time today. I really do appreciate you being here so much. And I really loved hearing your perspective on topics like gender roles and finding your own path. I think that's going to be really inspirational for our listeners. So thank you so much.
Berlin, you're one to watch. I'll be keeping an eye on you in
Thank
the night
you.
in a nice way.
Thank you. I
You're welcome.
appreciate that.